Heartbeat Podcast.
A podcast about health, politics, and society. Welcome to the second edition of Heartbeat Podcast. As you know, Namibia is in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. In recent weeks, we went from being one of the countries with the fewest cases of COVID-19 in Southern Africa to actually overtaking our neighbors Angola and Botswana. This has led to a rise in stigma. And people are really afraid because the number of cases in the Rongo region, specifically in the Walfish Bay, Swakopmund, Arandis area, are increasing on a daily basis. So we have a lot of fear. We have people avoiding certain places, and perhaps we even have discrimination happening already on the grounds of COVID-19. But as researchers have shown with HIV, HIV stigma didn't work. It actually made it difficult to prevent new infections. And the same will be with COVID-19. So we shouldn't actually spread fear. And we need more knowledge, respect, and information. So that is why we're bringing you this episode just on stigma. First, we're going to speak with local people in Windhoek about COVID-19 stigma. And then we're actually going to turn to Carl Pesat, who is on the ground in Walfish Bay, and he volunteers on the response to COVID-19. So stay tuned for that. Hey, welcome back to Heartbeat Podcast. Here's what ordinary Namibians in Windhoek had to say about stigma related to COVID-19. Hi, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the notion that those who have COVID-19, their names need to be available in the public?
Well, if it was me having the virus, I won't hesitate. I don't need to hide my name. So this thing is you haven't invited the virus to come. So if possible, they can be mentioned, or they can be. Their name can be also told if possible. But for those one who don't want, then it's up to them.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Yeah.
Good morning, ma'am. What do you think of those who are stigmatizing people with COVID-19, saying we need to know where they are, we need to know where they're living, we have to avoid all their families, and even the colleagues must keep away from them?
Well, I actually think that's not actually a good attitude, because people need to know that this corona thing has come to stay. It's actually going to become like TB and HIV. So my point of view is just that we have to learn to accept the people as they are, because it can happen to you. You know, this virus is very contagious, and you can get it. You know, even if as I'm standing here, I can even have the virus. So I believe people should really change the attitude. And they should not discriminate against people who are having the coronavirus.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
As promised, we will now turn to our main interview with Mr. Carl Pesat, who is based in Walfish Bay. Hi, good afternoon. I'm joined with Carl Pesat. He works currently for a corporate company, but then he also volunteers in this COVID-19 pandemic. Can you please just tell us about yourself, Carl?
Hi, everyone. My name is Carl Pesat. Good afternoon. I don't know what time you're watching this, but good afternoon. Just as Ponso mentioned, yes, I freelance for a corporate company in Walfish Bay, and I also I spend time with the homeless in Swakopmund, because I also recognize my privilege and recognize my ability to assist. And also from time to time, I also volunteer with counselor, activist, Knowledge Ipinge's office.
Wow. And where are you right now? Pardon me, I have the sniffles. It's definitely not a coronavirus. Well, maybe it is a coronavirus, but it's not SARS COV2, which causes COVID-19. It may be an ordinary coronavirus. Imagine now having a cold in Walfish Bay. That must be very scary for someone, right? People shun you if you have a cold now.
Yeah, they really try to avoid you. And in workplaces, which happened yesterday, where I am, is that someone was found out, they got tested, he's positive for COVID, and then the whole place shut down. Everyone had to go home. They had
that was a workplace in Walfish Bay or Swakop?
This is where I'm currently am now. I'm in Walfish Bay with a client.
Wow. So imagine the stigma. So even just having a common cold is very difficult right now, right?
100% right.
But I wanted to know now, what are your observations regarding the mood in Walfish Bay? And how does that relate to what we've also been reading in the news about and hearing about the rise in cases?
Okay, so that's a good question. I've been thinking about it, and I mean, I'm not thinking about it. It's real. There's a certain state of anxiety. There's a certain state of paranoia. People have it in certain doses, and you can see it through their interactions. They do ask you, where did you come from? Did you wash your hands? Why are you touching your face? So the interactions in this regard is quite high, and it's in your mind. It's in your mind. It's buzzing. It's popping. It's just like this the whole time. People are asking you. And they ask you if you quickly went out for a smoke break, as an example. They ask you, did you wash your hands when you came back in the office?
Right.
So it's I think mental health is going to be a component after this and during this COVID thing. And just like you mentioned, there is an exponential amount of increase in cases over the last couple of 7 days, if I last checked, right? I do check the statistics, so I'm quite well versed in it, and I will explain certain things, the reasons why we are where we are.
With how it's affecting you, exactly, the mental health of people and the whole feeling of paranoia. At the moment, I think it's a bit early to say if it's exponential. I mean, something to really be exponential, you'd have to fit, an exponential curve and see is it really. But I mean, regardless, it's a lot of cases. How are people now reacting? Do you feel that it's still the same Namibia, or are people becoming mean and nasty towards those who have it? Is this sort of witch hunt? People calling out for reveal the names, tell us who they are. And also, we have a lot of young people as well affected. How could that affect their chances of ever going back to school, right?
Yeah, it is the disruptor. This is the disruptor of 21st century, number one. There's a possibility that school might be cancelled until the end of next month. So that possibility is there in the Orongo region. The cases are increasing unabated. There's nothing going to stop it. And I think coming from a psychosocial perspective and from what I've interacted, especially if we're dealing with the homeless people in my interactions with them, they are asking simple questions. When is this ending?
Right.
Second question they're asking is, second thing I've noticed with them as an example in their case is that they're becoming so sober. They are getting off their drug addictions. And also at the same time, they're really having time to reflect on themselves, who they are as a person. But coming back to your general question of how is this disrupting, I think you're right, there's stigma. When I went to the other weekend, I've been asked, you're coming from the land of COVID. Are you coming from COVID, Carl? So there is that question that comes from there, that people are stigmatizing you. But if you look at this, and I have to repeat myself, and I have to always educate people to say, look, the mortality, just correct me here with the terminologies, the mortality rate is very low.
Exactly.
For every 100,000 infections, the death rate globally is as around about between 65 to 35.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fraction. It's really, really a fraction. And juxtapose or right next to this idea of this other virus called Ebola, you have up to a 70% to 60% chance of dying. And that is no joke. So it's something I always have to explain, and it's something I've noticed in terms of the mobilization teams within the medical fraternity in the Walvis Bay Medical District and with the nurses, is that they need to do education in terms of you will not die. There is the very likelihood of it is very unlikely. So I also do my part when people interact, as well as in the circles I find myself in. So you need to go out there and also preach. There's currently talk of doing a door-to-door campaign. Currently in Walvis Bay, the people are thinking about going hardcore.
Like stigma or testing?
For two things. Just so you know, testing is only targeted testing. Targeted testing in a sense that mass testing is the assumption that you can get up right now and go get tested.
Right.
Targeted testing is part of the tracing where they're tracking people who've been in contact with the infected persons, and they can be tracked and tested. So that is targeted testing currently happening. In terms of the current results they're having, their target was 2,000 or 1,000 tests a day. That's not happening. That's not true. I can confirm that right now. These guys are only reaching 300 to 400 to 500 tests. It's too many people. However, the intention is great.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're still going to build it up to that. So I think they still have a while to go. However, I know that there's consensus with regards to the political and corporate mobilization that door-to-door is in terms of both education and as well as to eradicate stigma around this.
Wow.
So as an example, almost like HIV/AIDS, it's not a death sentence, but there are more structural problems Walvis Bay has, and that's something I need to go a little bit more in detail that the most of Namibia does not have.
For example?
So as an example, they have cardinal sin number one in Walvis Bay is that Walvis Bay has got an abnormal housing problem. So Walvis Bay has not tackled this in any way. This has got to do with the political and officials of the town council for the last. Remember, Walvis Bay is technically the last territory of Namibia.
Right.
Yeah. So they've only came on board technically in '95. So due to many reasons, they have not rolled out mass housing. So typical situation, what you find yourself in Narabal or Khoisimund is that overcrowding is a norm. Let me overemphasize this. And the stats that someone came up with, they're talking about 4,000 people per square meter in Khoisimund alone.
Wow. So with those statistics, it's very difficult to blame the people for being part of a chain of transmission, right? Because even though you wash your hands, you social distance, if you're living in such high densities, it's almost inevitable that you will acquire the infection.
Correct, Poncho. So, and then I think the second reason on top of that is that the political leadership, specifically Knowledge's office in April, and as well as gardener support from the private sector community, because there is an industry base in Walvis Bay. Let's not forget this. And there's high technical support here. So the business community with Knowledge's office decided that they'll roll out an isolation ward of 150 beds because they already planned this out. They already saw this coming. And they've submitted all these documents and there was no feedback from the ministry itself. And I've sat in one meeting before, and I think, and I don't want to involve the new governor in this, but specifically the officials, I think it's quite political to a large extent. And secondly, they're making it explicitly clear that this new guy running the town here is not going to get credit for what's going on. And a lot of backlash in terms of the current quarantine facilities, the inadequacies of it can't deal with the current outbreak. We're going to have fundamental problems.
Well, yeah, we saw the article in the Namibian on Monday speaking about the quarantine facilities and the alleged inadequacies in those facilities. That was a front page story on the Monday, 29th of June edition of the Namibian. So I think there's also another element to the stigma, which is if you have it, then you have to go into those facilities, and perhaps there will be avoidance of people wanting to come forward with the symptoms. for fear of ending up in a facility that is allegedly not up to par. And of course, we cannot say it really is not up to par. We still need to get the official feedback from the side of the Ministry of Health and Social Services. So our aim is not to tarnish them. Our aim is just to discuss what has already been reported on. So that's also a thing to consider, right? How will people now come forward? Will everyone want to come forward, or will some people choose to self-isolate at home and the consequences thereof? So that there's also needs to be, of course, door-to-door outreach on why it's important to go to the state isolation, why for many reasons you may not be able to self-isolate at home, right? Because it's very easy to be tempted to leave your house.
Yeah.
So Carl, I really have to thank you, and at this juncture to say that we really hope that in Walfish Bay there will soon be a curtailing in the infections, and that you break all those chains of transmission. So thank you so much for speaking with us on Heartbeat today.
Cool. Pleasure, Pancho.
That brings to an end our second edition of Heartbeat Podcast on stigma. I urge everyone to think carefully before they label someone as sick or treat them in a different way just because they may have been in a group where someone knew of a COVID-19 patient or went through quarantine or even recovered from COVID-19. Join us next week for another edition of Heartbeat Podcast. I'm Pancho Molongeni, signing off.